Aliko Dangote. Many people don't know a lot about this man, except that he's the richest person in Africa. But what if I tell you that there is a lot more to the billionaire figure than that? With a gripping marriage life, background and shrewd political dealings, Dangote is not just an entrepreneur. He is, if not the most interesting character in the Nigerian scene. What you are about to read will change how you see this mysterious billionaire mogul, and will offer an inside look into his personal world of power and wealth. In 2011, Dangote was announced the richest man in Africa by Forbes media company, a position that he has been holding for over 13 years and counting. At the time of this announcement, Dangote's net worth stood at about $13.8 billion, and in 2015, it skyrocketed to a whopping $25 billion. Although that figure dropped to $10 billion 5 years later, thanks to the depreciation of Naira. His position as the continent's wealthiest man remained unchallenged. However, this is just a view from an outsider perspective. There is a lot more to the man behind this fortune. The number one mystery about Dangote is the question of how he was able to achieve his wealth in the first place. The answer is simple: his family.
From a wealthy family, my late great-grandfather.
Saying that Dangote came from wealth is an understatement. He came from massive wealth. This is not to discredit his efforts, but to throw some light on some of privileges and opportunities he had while growing up, and how the clever young boy was able to leverage them. His mother, Maria Dantata, was the daughter of Sanusi Dantata, the top heir of Dantata family, who were widely believed to be the richest household in West Africa at the time. Dangote's own father, Mohammed Dangote, died while he was just 8 years old, leaving him to be raised by the great icon Sanusi Dantata, his maternal grandfather. Despite all the riches his own father owned, Dangote admitted that his father left him nothing.
I did not inherit any money from my father. I built everything from scratch to iron.
This was because the man had stated in his will that all his wealth will be given to charity. Perhaps he wanted his children to make their own wealth and not depend on any inheritance, which might have worked in a way. Aliko Dangote would go on to not just make his own wealth, but also become the richest man in Africa, with only sum of 500,000 naira loaned to him by his grandfather. Adjusting for inflation, the loan amount would be worth over 1.6 million naira today. But that is not even the shocking part. What was even more mind-blowing was that the 20-year-old was able to repay the loan in just 3 months by importing and selling agricultural produce in the country. Spending his childhood with his grandfather had not just taught him a lot. It has greatly influenced his interest in business even right from primary school, where it said he would often buy cartons of sweets and biscuits to resell to his classmates. In that same year, 1977, Dangote registered his first company, the Dangote Group. What started out as a small trading firm sold bags of cement, rice, sugar, and other commodities. While Dangote was making ripples in the business world, he wanted to settle down too, and he ended up marrying that same year, at just 20, to a woman named Ajia Zainab, in what was reported to be an arranged marriage. However, Dangote was not as successful as he was in the business world when it comes to the matter of the heart. His first marriage quickly ended in a divorce, and he decided to marry again, this time to a business partner known as Maria. It could be portrayed as a case of mixing business with pleasure, a situation that didn't turn out well, as he and Maria later ended up divorced. Surprisingly, Dangote retained Maria in his company, where she still serves as an executive despite their separation, illustrating Dangote's ability to separate sentiment from business when it comes to running his company. Meanwhile, the young CEO was still relentless in his pursuit of love, as he went for a third time, which we might say is the most interesting case. Not many people know that Aliko Dangote was once a suitor to Nafisa Yar'Adua, daughter of late President Umaru Musa Yar'Adua. Requested a hand in marriage in 2009 after reportedly being in a romantic relationship with the young lady. However, it was turned down by the woman, who later went on to marry an ex-governor of Bauchi State. Whatever the reason might be, the family had made their choice, and the richest man in Africa couldn't get the wife he wanted. But was Dangote really seeking a wife, or was he in search of a political alliance at that point, like many people had believed? Dangote's activities with the political class did not start today. His strategic meddlings with the government would earn him the label of a monopolist. From pitching his transport services to the Central Bank of Nigeria in the 1990s, Dangote was able to climb into the inner circle of ruling class, building connection with his expanding wealth and building wealth through his expanding connection. He would go on to solidify his position as a power figure when he donated the sum of 200 million naira in financing the re-election of President Olusegun Obasanjo in 2003. The re-election was a successful one, and Dangote was expected to be a beneficiary of the government due to the controversial donation he made to the ruling party during election. This expectation was not in vain, as the government would begin to raise eyebrows each time they enacted policies that favored the ambitious billionaire, often leaving his competitors in despair. One notable event was his popular rivalry with the Ibeto Cement company during the administration of President Umaru Musa Yar'Adua. The cement trading industry was a stronghold of Dangote's empire during that time, and the Ibeto Cement company was a contending competitor. It was a battle of who had the greatest market share in the billion-dollar sector, and Ibeto seemed to have secured the upper hand when he flooded the country with tons of cement imports, crashing the price of commodity within the country and sending ripples around the Nigerian cement market. This badly affected Dangote, as his business was on the verge of crumbling since he couldn't sell his cement bags at profitable prices. This led his company to write a letter to the Yar'Adua government challenging the import license the administration had granted to Ibeto, which was highly disrupting the market. And whether it was just the letter or not, nobody could tell, as the coming days saw the revocation of Ibeto's authority to import cement, leaving Dangote as the dominant player in the market. The Yar'Adua administration highlighted its commitment to encouraging local production of the commodity, advising that Ibeto Cement Company focus on improving local production rather than focusing on imports. This was a big blow to Dangote's rival, which led to numerous lawsuits, public backlashes, and political drama that continued into successive administration. But one thing was sure: Dangote had not just saved his business, he had ruthlessly secured the top spot for himself through the elimination of his opponents, which further allowed him the space and resources to completely grip the cement industry in Nigeria. By 2007, Dangote's wealth had increased exponentially, catapulting him to become Nigeria's first dollar billionaire. In the same year, he had completed his first cement factory. 5 years later, he was able to secure a land lease from the government on a portion of the abandoned Apapa seaport, where he built one of the largest sugar refineries in the world, establishing a vertical supply chain that helped him dominate the sector. In 2013, Forbes officially declared him the richest man in Africa. To Dangote, however, he admitted seeing his valuation as just numbers written on paper and had to once visit a bank to withdraw $10 million in a raw cash in order to get a feel of his money and not just hear about it.
It's written numbers and cash $10 million, and I took it home for yourself.
It was a funny story he told about himself, but it revealed a lot more about him. For a person like Dangote, He seems less interested in how much he has made, but is more interested in how much he can make. That was why in the same year he was declared the richest man in Africa. Dangote was already in talks with the governments and investors about building a crude oil refinery at approximately $20 billion. It would be the largest single investment in the history of the country and also a game changer for the Nigerian petroleum industry. The nation black gold. The project took about 15 years from its conception to completion, as President Muhammadu Buhari finally commissioned the gigantic project in 2023, just a week to the end of his tenure. This was after so many delays and promises concerning the completion of the industrial site, which was now a matter of national interest, given that it would be the first major private oil refinery in Nigeria after so many decades. Everybody believed that the refinery, slated to produce 650,000 barrels of refined crude per day, would mean a crash in the price of petroleum products and would bring a sustainable end to the country's importation of refined crude oil, with spare to export. The time of speculation had come and gone, and it was time for results. Did the $20 billion project fulfill its expectation? Fast forward to 2024, and Dangote is at loggerheads with the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation (NNPC), whom he accuses of trying to sabotage the success of his refinery. But what was the cause of this outcry? And if true, why would Nigeria's own petroleum company try to undermine Dangote's massive investment in oil sector? First, the Petroleum Regulatory Body had released a test result from a sample product of Dangote's refinery, citing that its refined product contained a high amount of sulfur impurities. Dangote quickly debunked this, even providing his own samples at the public hearing to prove that his products were in fact very pure by standard measures. Then the issue of supply emerged. Where would Dangote be sourcing his crude oil supply from, given that the NNPC's share in the daily oil production in Nigeria was not enough to satisfy the crude oil demand of the massive refinery, thanks to the rundown of the country's mining operation? And not just that, the NNPC wanted to sell the crude oil supply to Dangote in dollars, which seems ridiculous given that both were Nigerian companies operating primarily within Nigeria. However, after a series of backlashes and going back and forth, the NNPC backtracked on this, finally deciding to supply crude oil to Dangote's refinery at Naira prices, even though the supply would be less than the capacity of the refinery. But the problem of Dangote with the NNPC were yet to end. Upon resuming operation, the NNPC demanded to have an exclusive patronage of the refinery, which would hinder any other buyer but the NNPC from purchasing petroleum from the company to sell to the consumer market. Many believe that such a move was unfair and only opened up an avenue for the exploitation of the masses by the NNPC. Dangote himself was not satisfied by this, but he had no option, given that it would be impossible for his refinery to operate without succumbing to the demands of the NNPC. At this point, many called for the intervention of the government, but the federal government had made it clear that it would not meddle in the affair of the two companies, given that they were both independent and had the right to negotiate between one another. But many believe this was a case of an unwillingness to act on the side of the government, given that it held the power to easily manipulate decisions in the NNPC but had chosen not to. It amplified the theory that a conflict of interest was at play within members of the government who, in collaboration with the nation's oil cabal and foreign actors, did not want to relinquish their hold on the oil market to the new player. In the face of all of this, Dangote has confessed that his decision to build the refinery is a regrettable one, and given what he knows today, he would not make the same decision if the hand of the clock were to be turned back.
I knew that there would be a fight, but I didn't know that mafia in oil, they are stronger than mafia in drugs.
Away from all the noises in the media, Dangote has not just built businesses, he has built a family too. He's a father to 3 daughters and an adopted son, all from his previous marriages. And he is currently not married, although he has been caught up in scandals involving mistresses. Dangote has fully devoted himself to his business. According to him, the demands of his investments have spared no commitment to share with a life partner. Even with all his wealth, Dangote lives quite a frugal life, owning just 2 houses, one in Lagos and the other one in Kano, his hometown, with a rented apartment in Abuja. Just like every other billionaire, he has a yacht too, which he named after his mother, Maria. Beyond the figures and controversies, Dangote represents resilience and ambition, continually pushing the boundaries of entrepreneurship in Africa. Despite challenges he faces today, from battles with government bodies to investment dilemmas, Dangote remains a pivotal figure in Nigeria's economic landscape. Looking at his life as much as we know it, it's now clear that wealth, power, and influence come with their own set of trials. And Dangote's story, which is an example of this, is far from over.